Hi, I'm John Fitzgerald and welcome to this week's edition of Team WealthBuilders. Some feedback. Is there a housing oversupply? That's the question. The census says we've got 1 million homes more than we need today. That is 1 million vacant homes on census night. What does it all mean? Well, you know, this isn't new. Back in the last census, 2006, we had 800,000 homes or thereabouts. What happens? A lot of it's holiday accommodation. So where I am on the Gold Coast as an example, there'd probably be 50% of the buildings that aren't used for 50% of the year. And then the other 50% of the year, they are used. But I also asked Jason Anderson, who's an economist that we use previously with BIS Shrapnel, chief economist, and now with MacroPlan Dimasi. Jason, what is the nuts and bolts of this? And it's interesting, it's really quite interesting, because the couple of trends that have come out of the last census was that we were falling, the number of people per household were falling from 3.2 to then 2.9, 2.8, and then 2.7, 2.6, thereabouts. We've actually stagnated at that, but what's interesting is the number of persons with one person per household has actually gone down. So now there's more people per household, and that's really a distinct outcome of the GFC. So what was happening was a lot of people in households were living on their own, and that was, you know, articles and news probably a few years ago that there's a lot of single dwellers and that we're all getting older single dwelling. Well, now those single dwellers, because of the GFC, have got their family and friends back. You know, the kids have moved back into home, which may be exactly where you're at today. Or we'll be looking after our parents in time, who knows? All of these things are interesting because it's changing the dynamic of our housing in two ways. It's making our house, going to make our houses smaller, and already our blocks of land are becoming smaller. But let me get back to the point. Is there a housing oversupply? Absolutely not. The last census in 2006 and even 2001 showed that we had all these vacant homes in Australia. Yes, a lot of them are holiday homes, unused homes, and many people have holiday homes, as you know. But they're also homes that they rent out for holiday space, and that's not necessarily picked up by the census as we'd all imagine, as you could imagine. So think about that from the dynamic. There's no oversupply of housing, and more importantly, the undersupply. Now, this is really acute in some areas. Southwestern Sydney, a massive undersupply today. In Brisbane, there's a massive undersupply in certain areas, particularly Brisbane Gold Coast corridor and the inner north and the inner west, a massive undersupply of housing. In Melbourne, they're saying there's an oversupply of housing. It's not housing, it's apartments. There's over 10,000 apartments in the southwest, or I should say in the southern regions, that have been approved, the southeast that has been approved, and that's enormous, whereas typically those areas would have maybe 3,000 approvals. So they've got 2 or 3 years supply. So when we look at supply and oversupply, we need to look at particular regions to get our initial dynamic, that is what's happening on an annual basis, so we can forecast for our compound growth, but then take the bigger picture of what the supply is going to be. And the supply is phenomenal. In Melbourne population between now and 2026 will grow by nearly 1.5 million people. Phenomenal. Sydney, 1.3, 1.4, Brisbane around 1.2, 1.3, and Perth around nearly 1 million people. Now, these are absolutely giants and absolutely phenomenal. And look at that, not just on the number of people, but the percentage growth, because the percentage growth is as important. Brisbane will have nearly 60% growth. 60% growth, which is absolutely phenomenal. Brisbane and that southeast Queensland region. And that's the key to us, from my perspective, for wealth building. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to me.